A few years ago, I got Facebook shame into running Reach the Beach for Calumet. I think those that did it would have called it gentle encouragement, but it was a community effort. And so because of that community, I said yes and signed up for Reach the Beach. But because I didn't want to embarrass myself or cause my van to be the last to reach the beach, I hired a running coach. One day she had me running on a track, and to increase my speed, she had me run 600 meters or 3/4 of the track and then walk 200 meters. So I did that over and over until I did the number of repetitions in her plan for me. And when I finished the last repetition, she walked over to me and said, "Do you have another 600 in you?" And I hesitated between the truth, or what I thought the truth was, and what she wanted to hear, but I went with me and said no. The next part of that night's plan was to run hard for 200 meters and then walk for 200 meters. And apparently that part of the workout went well, because afterwards she came up to me and said, "Jeff, you had another 600 in you." Initially I received it as a compliment, but have begun to use it as my running mantra. Whenever I started to tire, whenever I wanted to give up, I would hear her voice in my head, "You have another 600 in you." And it would give me the oomph, the motivation, the confidence to try to keep going. That saying trickled into my personal life and my church life. Need to have a hard conversation? Got another 600 in you? Want to try something that you've never done before? Got another 600 in you? Something coming up that makes you anxious to deal with? Got another 600 in you? Want to sit on the couch all day instead of being active? Got another 600 in you? When the pandemic hit, that phrase almost disappeared from my radar screen. Starting in a new congregation, moving to a new home and community, trying to figure out how to do ministry in new ways, COVID weight gain, isolation. All those could have been times when I asked myself, "Do you have another 600 in you?" But I didn't think about it, especially when it came time to check on those people who are important to me. I have always loved this part of the book of Ruth that Davis read. When I hear "Where you go, I go, where you live, I'll live, your people are my people," I hear the voice of God. I hear God saying to me, to us, "Where you go, I will go. Where you live, I will be. Your community is my community." And what has been so important to me is the steadfastness of Ruth, being an example of the steadfastness of God. Naomi had nothing left in Moab. No property, no rights. She wanted to go home to Bethlehem, where her home had been, where her community was. Ruth had nothing in Bethlehem. Her community was in Moab. Naomi tried to go alone, do it her way. But Ruth would not let her go alone. Ruth gave up everything to support Naomi, to be her family, to be her community, to be with her through the ups and downs of the next part of the journey, to be with her always. Ruth had a lot of 600s in her. And when I hear the story of Ruth, I try to remember the promise of the steadfastness of God, to be where we are, to go where we go, so that we have community, to never leave us alone. I struggle in every sermon that I do because I learned in seminary that I'm supposed to preach Christ crucified, but I usually want to preach on what that means for us. And I certainly want to talk about Ruth's steadfastness for Naomi as a reminder of God's steadfastness for us. But I also want to talk about how Ruth's steadfastness is a reminder of how we can be steadfast in our community and to one another. At Zion and Southington for our Lenten midweeks, we are doing a series called Created for Community, written by Stephen Wilco, associate to the Bishop for New England, and fun fact, a van mate in my very first Reach the Beach. The midweek is based on, in the early church, the weeks before Easter were a time in which the whole community took responsible for the training of the catechumens. I mostly think of Lent as this thing we go through alone. I give up something, I take on something. But Lent is about community. And I am struck by how this is a story of community and relationships, of loyalty and steadfastness. The relationship between Ruth and Naomi. Ruth understanding that Naomi wanted to go back in her community, to her community. Ruth giving up her community, her potential for a new marriage, to be loyal to Naomi, and how that loyalty is seen by Naomi's kin. Ruth had another 600 in her, in every twist and turn of the story. In the end, sometimes we are Naomi's, feeling alone, in a place that doesn't feel like home, wanting to be where we are comfortable, wanting to be where it feels familiar. Sometimes we are proud and feel like we can do it on our own. Those of us that are like that, I invite you to look for the Ruths in your life, those that will be with you and walk with you. But in the end, I think we're all called to be like Ruth, steadfast to one another, loyal to our community, even willing to go to a new community. I know that is hard in a pandemic. More than once, I've had to dig out another 600 to reach out when I didn't feel up to it. So Ruth is my hero for being steadfast, loyal, and being part of the community. When I start to flag, when I run, when I tire, when I don't want to go out, I will continue to use my mantra, got another 600 in you? But when it comes to being loyal, steadfast to others and to my community, my mantra will be, Jeff, got some Ruth in you? Amen.